It's the 27th of April 2024. I want to talk about 3 different centuries of classical guitar. 300 years ago, when Antonio Stradivari was alive, a contemporary of his, J.S. Bach, was writing great music, played in church for hundreds of people. And Stradivari had finished the violin. It was as it was going to be in our day now, 300 years later. But the guitar had double strings at the time. You had Baroque guitars. You had bihuelas. And in the first decade of the 19th century, it is said that the 6-string became rather universal throughout Europe. J.S. Bach, he had written the Bach chaconne for the violin, which is now played on the guitar all the time, and that was written between 1718 and 1720, so it is said. So he was 33 to 35 years old when he wrote that. Roughly around the same time, he composed the cello suites. That was between 1717 and 1723. And between 1717 and 1740, he composed his lute suites that are very well thought of, delightful to listen to and to play. We jump ahead 100 years. Yesterday was the 200th anniversary of Trinidad Huerta arriving in New York. The 15th of May, less than 3 weeks away, will be the 200th anniversary of his first performance in New York at the City Hotel. He remained in the United States for a couple years. He charged, and he got willingly, $2 a head for tickets to his farewell concert in 1826. He had already been publishing sheet music in Europe by 1822. He was born in 1800 in the city of Orihuela in southern Spain, in Murcia province, I believe. And by the time he was 33 years old, in 1833, he was being called the Paganini of the guitar. He performed a couple years later with Frédéric Chopin and Franz Liszt. Here is a 1846 Agustin Altimira guitar. Around 1849, 1850, he made a guitar for Trinidad Huerta, who performed in Barcelona as well as other cities throughout Europe. And Altimira had a workshop besides a music store. He started about 1825. He got married in 1829, 1830. His wife would do ironing of your suit when you came over to see what guitars were available. But by the 1850s, his music store was selling concert tickets to Julian Arcas concerts, Antonio Cano concerts, Tomas Damas concerts, and in 1878 he sold tickets to one of the earliest known Francisco Tarrega concerts at his music store. Tarrega being 26 years old at the time. Now, the year before 1833, when C.F. Martin arrived in the United States, I want to read a little bit about Pedro Antonio Chemena. In 1832, he invented the tornabos. We see that Antonio de Torres would use a tornabos in many of his instruments decades later. The Queen of Spain gave a medal to Pedro Antonio Chemena, written two different ways, Ximena, Chemena. By 1841, there were labels in his guitars where it mentioned he was the inventor of the tornabos. C.F. Martin in New York eventually moved to Nazareth, Pennsylvania, 80 miles directly west of New York, and I mean directly west. He had guitars at that time that had a shape much like the plantilla we see of Cadi's guitars. I don't have a Cadi's guitar right now here, but I will show you this 1867 Antonio de Torres guitar. Very small. This was made in Sevilla. A couple years later, in 1869, Antonio de Torres moved to Almeria, where he made guitars until he passed away in 1892. But this guitar, made in 1867, there were a lot of different things going on all around the world, as they do every day. What was going on in Japan? Japan today is a place where you can go to Tokyo and you can go to 8 classical guitar stores in Tokyo. There's over 60 guitar stores in Tokyo. It's very favored, though at this point, violin and piano is the only thing you can go to a university and get a degree with. They still don't believe it to be that serious of an instrument, but tomorrow's another day. The Meiji Jidai, the period of time of the Meiji Emperor, started in 1867, the year that this was made. And I want to read a little bit about that guitar. Was made 2 or 3 years after the American Civil War. We had the ironclad ships come about. Japan in the Meiji Jidai era became modern, so modern that it outdistanced China. There was a lot of European countries, German, British, as well as other countries that had influence in China, had outposts for getting products that they could do to increase trade. But in June of 1864, Japan had its first ironclad, like the Monitor Merrimack stuff that we know of in the American Civil War. It had a ship called the Kotetsu, which was later named the Azuma. And Japan really went all out into becoming modern, considering 1853, Commodore Perry arrived in Japan. Japan had been shut off to the world for over 200 years. And I want to go to the next. So we have 1724 is by the time the Bach chaconne and the cello suites had been written. Before then, and 1824 we had the arrival of Trinidad Huerta in New York. He stayed there. We have documentation on at least 13 or possibly more concerts that he did. He played in New York, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and Saratoga, New York. And he was, and he had the youth, he had the experience. He played sonata or more than one by Fernando Sor. Fernando Sor had been publishing music that he authorized at least since 1813. That's what my colleague Brian Jeffrey told me just in an email a couple days ago upon my asking. So then we jump to 1924, another 100 years forward, and what do we have? We have Andres Segovia doing his Paris concerts, his first European tour. He had already played in South America twice, 1920 and 1921. He played for the Queen of Spain, I believe, in 1916, Emilio Pujol, who lived a little over a mile away from Enrique Garcia's workshop, Tarrega living about 1.3 miles away from Enrique Garcia's workshop. Here's a 1907 Enrique Garcia. Jazz scales I do every so often when a guitar is actually out of tune. Guitar I just played was made 7 guitars after Tarrega's second Enrique Garcia, Garcia having won first prize at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Well, let's talk about Andres Segovia again. He plays in Paris. He joins Miguel Llobet. They met Hermann Hauser I in Germany. There's a famous photo taken with them and other aficionados of the classical guitar. And so Segovia brought his 1912 Santos made in the Manuel Ramirez shop, and Miguel Llobet brought his 1859 Antonio de Torres. And that changed the world as we know it for modern guitars. We haven't got to a triple top yet. Double tops are very popular. You've seen me do videos of a spruce top Dammann and a cedar top sandwich double top Dammann in the last few months. And so I'll be doing more videos. The 15th of May is coming up upon us pretty quickly here within 3 weeks. And I just turned 75 on the 14th of this month. And so I'm still hot to trot. I got the GAS, the Guitar Acquisition Syndrome. I have other instruments that'll be coming in. I have 3 guitars from Granada by Manuel Perez Paez, who did some very artistic things, and those will be here in a few weeks. And so I'm going to let you get back to your short attention span. I have over 100 videos on Instagram in the last 6 weeks. I see that sometimes people watch 6 seconds out of the 30-second reels I make. I have 1,400 videos on YouTube, and some of those now presently are looked at for maybe a minute and a half, an average amount. I encourage everyone to read and to learn foreign languages. I've translated 10 languages at this point in my career. Reading is very important. When people don't read and they are illiterate, they can't remember passwords. That happened in World War I to Ukrainian soldiers. You can watch all sorts of videos and read books, and but reading is very important. Illiteracy can cost people a lot of money. Friedel Hammer went to Italy in 1864, second time. He was there in 1848 during the revolution. You had 16 countries in Europe that had revolutions at that time, but he was there in Naples, and he went back in 1864. Due to illiteracy, he had the ability to buy a lot of Italian violins, because at that time in northern Italy, illiteracy was 75% endemic. I just watched the Napoleon movie, the other day, finished it last night. And at the time of Napoleon fighting British troops in Waterloo, British troops were 20% illiterate. And when you can't read, there's only so much you can know. They generally say what you know is the last thing that somebody told you to your ear. Have a nice day.